welcome to a special episode of Melt. I'm Ritvika Gupta. It's been a whole calendar year since COVID-19 became the new reality for the entire world, bringing with it unprecedented change and forcing brands and companies to adapt to the changing times. In this episode, we take a look at some of the conversations we have had on Melt through the last year to bring together ideas and lessons that will stand the test of time and help marketers and businesses navigate what lies ahead. India went into lockdown on 23rd March 2020, forcing brands to reevaluate strategies for their products, services, and most importantly, their stakeholders. CEOs had their work cut out for them, not just to ensure the safety of their employees, but also to navigate the sudden choppy waters their businesses had to face. The companies that weathered the storm, like Nestle India, Pidilite Industries, and Asian Paints, were the ones that took an empathetic approach to leadership and understood how to balance short-term needs with long-term goals.
The pandemic is a completely different animal. We don't know when it will end. People say, yes, we'll get the vaccine and we'll get the cure and all that, but we don't know when that's going to happen. And we certainly do not know what will be the deeper consequences on economy, on society, on the way in which people interact during this entire interregnum. So what are we left with as human beings? We are not left with rule books, we are not left with standard operating procedures, but we are left with a human-to-human contact as being the only way forward to navigate this dark tunnel and to navigate us from point A to point B. And that is why empathy is so important in leadership. You can be calm and collected and still not be empathetic. But you can be calm and collected and still feel a lot of empathy, which means that you have to genuinely feel for fellow humans. Number two is you must have the capability to understand their point of view. And most importantly, as a leader, you must want to do something about it. You can't just sit there and say, I feel your pain, but then you say, look, I'm sorry, but I can't do anything about it.
For any organization, people are the essence. And today, the DNA of any organization comes from the people who work within the organization. As a step towards this, while there were so many pressures in terms of stringent cost-cutting measures, we took a very considered opinion, and I personally felt that in these tough times, we need to award our employees very strongly. And I took a reverse tide in terms of looking at saying that we will increase the salaries of our employees. I can tell you this step in terms of ensuring that the salaries for each and every employee got increased was a step which got a certain exhilaration into the organization. So much so that so many employees wrote to me saying that we can join the organization at any point of time, at even midnight if it is required. At a clarion call, we will all come together and we will see that the organization is able to take whatever steps to kind of go ahead and establish themselves in terms of whatever business they can do. I feel that for any organization, in the life cycle of any organization, these problems will come. The environment will offer challenging situations. These are blips which will come in. And I think as leadership, we have to accept that in the entire big life cycle of any organization, we need to take considered opinions, which go a long way in terms of establishing a rapport with the people so that they truly feel that when you say that you are a responsible and a caring brand, you really mean it. It's not a flash in the pan in terms of saying so and acting in a very, very different manner, given the constraints which might come in.
You have to last it out and you know that the good times will return. So in our case, we're never a company that worries about this quarter and this quarter we must show this number. Our promoters, in fact, you spoke about Madhukar Bhai, his whole philosophy is do the right thing and the numbers will follow. So really as an organization, frankly, we're only concerned about doing the right thing. The right thing for our consumer, the right thing for our customer, the right thing for our user, and most importantly, the right thing for our employee. And if you do that, frankly, the results will follow. And if you look at our track record over the last, many, many years, hopefully that's a good testament to that philosophy. So for us, we are not worried about, this month and next month and so on. Yes, of course, we will conserve cash. We will do all the right things, but we will not do things which help us in the short term, but actually damage us in the long term. We are a long-term player. These days, I believe that the long term is the next 3 years. So we're focused on being a company that keeps building on its strengths. Fortunately, we're a financially prudent and very strong company. And our belief is, as this goes forward, the tough are the guys who will actually win in this situation over a period of time.
A few companies, including India's dairy giant Amul and FMCG majors Marico and Hindustan Unilever, emerged from the lockdown in a much stronger position than before. While operations pivoted to help meet consumer demands, communication and media strategies had to be changed as well. So while Amul took to increasing advertising spends on news channels, Marico chose to emphasize trust and brand safety, while HUL changed media weight depending on the changing media consumption trends.
No, you see, let me tell you, people are sitting at home and a whole family is there. And you know what is the talk generally? What to make, what you know, what he knows, she knows, what to cook, what to eat, what are the new recipes on the YouTube. So people are now talking and doing only cooking. And cooking means food. And food means dairy products, maximum. Whether you take cheese or you take our mithai made condensed milk or cream or butter or ghee. So we realize that this is the best time to target the whole family as a segment. And they're watching all this TV news. I mean, if you see on the social media type of demand which we are getting, like paneer, sale doubled. I mean, people are now eating a lot of paneer or cheese also. So I think we have got the top of the mind slot and also very good image also about Amul because of our association with Ramayana and Mahabharata. I think that was a very right decision because now later on when this lockdown is lifted and there will be thousands of advertising on the media will be lost.
I would say, I think 2-3 things. People are looking for trusted brands. People are looking for leadership brands. And in this kind of a situation, I believe stronger brands and stronger organizations, especially with resilience and stronger distribution, they get stronger and the weak gets weaker. And there's a huge opportunity for, as you know, that in 90% plus of our 90% of our portfolio, we are number one. 95% of the portfolio, we are number one or number two. And therefore, this is our, even if the category doesn't grow at the level it is supposed to grow. And you may be aware that there was a slowdown that was happening in consumption even before COVID hit.
Absolutely.
So therefore,
numbers we've seen.
I think the issue is that what we have to do is to drive, I would say, market share gain and make up even if the category growths are not there. And the second thing is, as a marketeer, I think people are not only looking for trusted brands they can trust, they are also looking for, in these times, can we pass on value to the consumer?
Right.
Because I think value is very, very important. A significant portion of our consumers in the middle income group or the bottom of pyramid will have issues of disposable income and over the next couple of quarters. And it is very, very critical we pass on that value to the consumer.
See, media weight ultimately follows demand, Anand. So what are the big changes that we are noticing in demand? We are noticing that there are some categories which are very heavily positively impacted by COVID, and it's not COVID itself, but by the new COVID and the new normal. I mean, the whole continuum. Some which are kind of neutral to it and some which are pretty negatively hit by it. The ones that are positive, of course, like categories like hygiene that HUL plays in, but in-home food is a very big part of it. So media weights have gone up there. I mean, categories that are neutral, there aren't that many which are neutral in the foods and refreshment space, but a lot of eating out categories. We have an out-of-home tea business. We have an out-of-home restaurant business called Unilever Food Solutions. We have an ice cream business where a large part of it is consumed out of home, but that has dramatically shrunk. So, you will find a shift between, I can only talk to you about foods and refreshments, but if you think about it conceptually, categories that are consumed heavily in home and in the confines of the home, you will find if you go and do media weight studies, you'll find much more media on them than out of home categories. And that certainly bears out in the portfolio that I handle in foods and refreshments and levers.
The lockdown also brought with it a greater need for collaboration between brands and their agency partners. Here's how two companies, ITC Limited and Restaurant Brands International, fostered a creative culture that helped create relevant, timely and quick communication.
We are as strong as our partners because you're as strong as your weakest link. So the relationships have been built with a lot of I think a lot of work done by both sides. I think these are invaluable and these can't be replaced. And I think before you ask this question, I never thought about it. You take it for granted, right? I think what I think both sides take for granted is there is a relationship where we can do things, we can experiment, we can go for it, we can go wrong. But it is our brand. And the understanding, I think one thing also helps is because when you work on a brand for a long time, there is a continuity as far as brand is concerned. So I don't have to explain to my agencies whether it is Ogilvy, whether it's a JWT, whether it's a Taproot, what my brand is. They know my brand as much as I know it. So we might have difference of opinion on what we have to do on this particular project, but having a common shared sense of what the brand is, you are able to produce stuff very, very quickly.
I think that two characteristics that help us here on Restaurant Brands International are first, I think we are very nimble and fast. So we were able to adapt to what was happening like very quickly. And we work very collaboratively together. So each country helping, feeding the other markets with knowledge of what was happening there, and then creating assets and creating materials and creating campaigns and creating procedures that would help with safety of the crew, with safety of the guest. So it was really like a joint collaborative effort with everyone like running at the same time and trying to map the different situations that the different markets had over time. I think that if you have a marketing team in an organization that's able to move fast and to pivot and change direction when it's needed, it becomes a bit easier because that's the way we work. I think that if you are in a corporation that moves slowly and you need like layers and layers of approval and decision making takes time, then I think you had a very hard time.
Welcome back. You're watching a special episode of Melt, where we are revisiting conversations from the last year to highlight lessons that will stand the test of time. The COVID-19 pandemic and ensuing lockdown fundamentally changed the world as we know it. People were living differently, buying differently, and in many ways thinking differently, thereby evolving the attributes and behaviors of the average Indian consumer. What changes were temporary and what will be permanent? Listen in.
I think this whole temporary disruption of gender roles, in India, of course, everything and the opposite will happen. So it may stick in some cases, but by and large, I think it's going to be, I did that and now I bought a lifetime ticket out of housework, and let the wife do it, let the maid do it. I think it'll go back to status quo. There will be some changes, I guess, in terms of at the margins, because we've all been doing it, so we know how it's done, which companies can look at. We're now washing clothes, so I know exactly how long surf lasts. I know that something with conditioner feels this way and something without feels that way. But it's at the margins. I think the big change is health, wellness, immunity, and so on. I've never bothered about leaving chappals at the door. I don't have carpets. I used to kind of obviously respect households that did it, but wonder how long, outside so dirty anyway. But I think now I'm going to start doing that. I think and I think it's also in a sense back to where we used to come from, all the juta and the don't touch this and, wash this 100 times and wash your hands after this and that, wash your clothes every time you go out and come back. Beta muh haath dho ke khana ke liye baith jao. I think all that is going to have a little more credence. That's what I think.
End of the day, I feel the responsibility now lies with us to make sure that we can draw that beautiful line between a consumer feeling secured in the environment and feeling scared in the environment or feeling overwhelmed with the apparatus. Because nobody wants to go out and eat in a very stressed atmosphere. I had a friend from Delhi call me and say that she went to Khan Market to eat and some restaurant. She said, I did not enjoy it because for me, eating out is not only about topping my tummy. It is about the whole experience, the noise, the interaction, the energy, which was missing. So I think that is going to be one of the biggest challenges we have. And I think the answer to that problem lies in how soon do we find an antidote or a vaccine which works on people. Because end of the day, it is the mental scar. People are scared. And apart from that, I think the masks, the gloves, the sanitizers are going to be our permanent friends for very long time to come, which essentially, if you ask me, is not such a bad thing, especially the sanitizer, because our personal sanitization habits needed an upgrade, which has now fortunately come because of this one. On the other side, I think the biggest change that we will see is reduced menus in every restaurant. That's going to be a change which will, and two reasons for it. One is the number of people who can work in the kitchen will now get reduced because of the people distancing norms. And also, I think in order to save your wastages and all, restaurants will like to use lesser SKUs in the restaurants, which essentially means that I may not have 50 dishes that I used to have earlier, but I will have the top 30, which is not a bad thing. Anyway, the top 30 probably contribute 90% of your sales. So that's another change I see. And I think, on a larger picture, Anand, we need a slew of what I call confidence building measures for consumers to come back to us. One thing is very certain. The kind of changes we saw in the security environment post 9/11 is what we will see in hygiene after this pandemic.
Right.
That is for sure. And I don't think life is going to be the same ever again in a way. Certain segments will suffer more than others. For example, a lounge bar or a banquet will suffer more than, let's say, a QSR. But eventually everybody will suffer.
Right.
It'll be an all new world we'll wake up to in the post-pandemic era.
The other big change on the account of the lockdown has been the quick adoption of digital technologies for both work and leisure. So while on one hand, OTT services and television came to the rescue to plug the need for entertainment, on the other, virtual events became the new destination for brands to continue learning, interacting and networking with their customers and communities.
See, the problem is that a lot of us just speak to PLU, which is people like us, and imagine that the rest of the world is exactly the same as me and my neighbor. So obviously it's not, because if you look at the income pyramid of the country and availability of content therefore to them. So if there is about 260 million people, homes in the country, the bottom 100 million homes in that pyramid don't even have a TV to start with. And of the 260 million homes, the top 5 or 6 million or maybe 10 million homes, I mean, it's between 5 and 10 million, have high-speed broadband. So if you want to watch recorded content or internet-based content on a large screen, then it's these 5-7 million homes who have access to it. In addition, there is 4G, on which you can watch stuff on your phones. But majority of the country, which is about 130 odd million homes of pay TV and about 30-35 million of free-to-air, so that's about 165 million homes in the country, are watching live content on TV.
Right.
I mean,
When you say TV,
any number of subscription figures for any of the OTT apps pale away in front of the 130 million pay TV and 35 million free-to-air homes.
Right. So to put it simply, what you're telling me is this is a lot of noise in circles that I go down.
Say that. I certainly would not say that. It's a niche. It is a niche that is growing very, very fast.
Right.
The base is so small.
Right.
And the pace of TV growth itself is so large that TV will always be running ahead of OTT.
I think when we go back to normal, whenever is that, and once people have forgotten and are not afraid, and social distancing is not a concept any longer, we will go back to face events. What quantity, what numbers, I don't know, because one thing has changed. I think more and more CXOs have now become comfortable with the thought of doing online meetings, for example, right? And so similarly, I'm wondering when small meetings need to be done, I think that's where the situation will change. When very informative, information-led conversations need to be done, even if they are one to many, I think you will find a lot more openness in people for virtual events. When a global event needs to be done, not everybody would always think of traveling now is, where I'm coming from. Where the water will find its level, I don't know. But I don't think we're going back to completely being 100% face-to-face events, like we used to earlier.
The new year has brought with it a glimmer of hope for the future. Vaccination drives have begun, and though the challenges as a result of the pandemic continue to evolve, there's a hint of optimism in the air as well. Listen into the prognosis for India and its economy in 2021 and what Indian brands need to do in order to continue making a mark in the global economy.
I always have been a raging bull about India, and I continue to be. I think Prime Minister Modi has done a tremendous job of positioning India on the world stage. And, you see the projections that China by 2028 will be the largest economy in the world. And India will be coming up fast behind China as one of the most dominant economies in the world. Certainly from a population basis, it will surpass China in a few years. And I think inevitably India will become even more and more important on a world stage. It will become one of the leading economies in the world, rivaling the USA and China in due course. So for us, it's really important. And I think in a world context, it will become important. In 2021, I see India rebounding.
To me, Brand India is a great shame. The reality of Brand India is it's down with China and Mexico like this. To me, it shouldn't. It should be ahead. It should be more similar to the US. Deeply advanced in a technology sense, deeply humanitarian and intellectual. And so, we need to fix that. The second is, I also think that Indian brands beyond sort of the IT services are relatively unknown. You've got the eco car of the future, perhaps, in being built in India. Most people don't know that. And so it really has to come. I mean, I heard Mr. Modi speak to the World Economic Forum, and he was damn persuasive, but we just don't see it enough. Our media more covers China and Western Europe. And so I just can give you the American view. I mean, India has to work harder to get its stories across and get its business heroes, particularly from the manufacturing side, out there.
With that, it's a wrap on this special episode of Melt. We hope you enjoyed revisiting these conversations. And yes, you can revisit all of them at any time. Our archives are available on readytomelt.com. Do remember to follow us on social media. We are at Ready to Melt to keep track of all that's happening in the world of marketing and communications. I shall see you next week. Goodbye.